welcome to this webinar, Flexibility Without Complexity. Just as a little bit of housekeeping before we kick off with introductions, if we can ask throughout the webinar that if you've got questions, please use the Q&A functionality on Zoom. So it should be there at the bottom of the screen if you click and ask your questions, and we'll pick up those questions at the end and ask them. As I am doing this from home, apologies if there are any background noises. I do have dogs. They're usually not too noisy, but if you do hear a bark, I apologize. And final thing, just to say that we are recording the webinar, so we will share the on-demand version afterwards, and details of that be shared to everybody who joined this call. So, firstly, welcome. My name is Angus Blest. I look after Adyen's commercial partnerships across Europe. And I'm joined today by Antonio from one of our partners, Skillnet, who we've done lots of work with. Antonio, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Angus, and hi, everybody. Thank you. My name is Antonio Alvaro. I'm Senior Vice President for Solutions and Skillnet, and I'm responsible for our solution and implementation for cloud and digital services.
Brilliant, thank you, Antonio. I think a really important place to start is why Adyen and Skillnet, and I think there's quite a few synergies between our two businesses, which become apparent through the topic that we're talking about here. Both of us are very focused on trying to help merchants deliver unique experiences and get the best out of their technology platforms, and help them serve their customers with cool and exciting customer journeys. But we've also got a real synergy in the number of tech stacks we work with, and also geographical coverage, with both organizations being very international in nature. So we're really excited to be putting together this webinar alongside our partner Skillnet. So onto the topic of today, flexibility without complexity. I think one thing that we've certainly seen over the last 18 months is things can change, and things can change very dramatically at pretty short notice. And what we have seen and what we believe is having the ability to adapt to that changing environmental situation that's occurring is really critical to your success. And those businesses over the last 18 months who've been able to deliver and adapt their offer out to customers are the ones that have been more successful during this challenging time. So having a flexible approach is really important. But the last thing you need is huge amounts of complexity that makes it too hard to be flexible and not to be and not practical. So the ability to be flexible without complexity really comes down to the suppliers you choose and the infrastructure around your systems. And Adyen, as a single platform organization that we deliver the same platform across all channels and across all geographies, really helps with that simplicity side of things. And obviously organizations like Skillnet really help with the kind of flexibility in designing the right customer journeys. So getting into the meat of the content, we're really in what we call the age of experience, and I think this is more so now than it ever has been. One of the things that shoppers have had over the last 18 months is the ability to transact. They've been able to go online and buy things, but obviously the experience of shopping, the pastime of shopping, has been something that has been not readily available to consumers across the world. And obviously there's been different stages of lockdown in different parts of the world at different times. But it is that the act of going shopping, for the experience of going shopping, is something that people have missed. And I think as the world returns to normal, the one thing that everybody really wants is that experience of shopping. But layer on top of that the fact that they have now been behaving and shopping in a completely different way over the last 18 months than they have done previously. There are things through that experience that they've loved, as well as things that they haven't loved. So consumers and shoppers are really now coming to this with a world, well, I want the best of everything. I want the convenience and the the capabilities I've had as we've moved into an online world, but also I still want to have that experience. I want to go back to having that experience of visiting stores and shopping in the stores. And I think it's journeys and new customer journeys that are going to be really important to help bring those shoppers back into the stores and give those customers those experience they need. And whether that is helping them with their cross-channel returns, be that longer returns windows, or whether it's providing digital receipts when they're in the store so they don't have to touch a physical piece of paper that's being handed over from someone, or whatever those experiences are. What we do know is that the customers want to feel safe, and they expect retailers and businesses to be flexible about how they deal with them and give them a really good experience however they choose to shop, whether that is in a very traditional retailing environment, whether that's the use of their mobile phone whilst they're in the store, or whether that's shopping when they're at home. People's expectations have changed, and as businesses, we need to provide the experience that they're expecting to get the best returns from that. And one thing here that I think is really interesting to show you and give you an idea of the way Adyen have been thinking about our transaction volumes and the change of those over the last 18 months. We all know the pandemic hit at the end of Q1 2020. And if we look at this graph on the screen, the yellow line shows that impact of that on physical in-store or offline retailing. So a massive drop-off as that occurred. Now, what we've got is the thin blue line is our online retail volumes. And so we saw, as that dropped, we saw an increase in the online retail as people were transitioning from in-store to online retailing. But what's really good to see is if we had to look at the total volume, which is the thicker gray line through there, is that after initial dip where people stopped spending money, we've actually seen an increase in shopping, in total retail shopping across that. And I think what we've seen is people have adapted. And so the immediate reaction is, oh, I can't shop, I'm not going to shop. And then people's behavior changed. And I think a really good example for that is and I talked to my parents who are in their 70s, very reluctant online shoppers, and pre-COVID, they didn't buy anything online. But over the course of this change, they've now been forced into buying things online and have gone, you know what, this isn't that hard, this isn't that difficult, this works. And so then they're more comfortable. And so they've in effect broken that barrier of shopping online, but still will want to shop in the store when they come out. And so really what we're seeing is we've seen a quickening to some degree of the transition from in-store to online retailing. But as you can see, the in-store retailing is still returning. So we've now got more shoppers that are going to be choosing to interact with retailers across all their channels rather than just one. And fundamentally, it's the shoppers who love that flexibility of purchasing across multiple channels. Shoppers really just want to buy things, and they want it to be convenient and easy, and they want information about and what they're buying. Amazon has grown hugely successful by basically making things really convenient and really easy. Now, that's awesome, but there's also an experience aspect to shopping as well. And I think what we're seeing and what we expect to continue as we move out of it is people to want those cross-channel experiences, to be able to interact and get the same experience, whether they're interacting with people across all the different channels. And the way to deliver a consistent experience across all those channels is to, wherever possible, have a unified technical architecture behind your commerce offering across all those channels, and that helps you deliver a more joined up experience for the shopper. And obviously then if we do need to pivot back according to environmental changes, it's much easier to react if we've got a set of systems and a setup in place that supports all of those different possibilities. So one of the things that helps us understand what's happening in our business is by the use of data. And through our payment data, we're able to build a picture of the shoppers and their behaviors and what's happening to then help you adapt to give the right journeys to those shoppers. And an example that we have here is some data we had from shoppers coming into London. I'm based in London, this is why I use London as an example. Of London has a large, this is a traditional, not in this year when we've had no travel, let's be clear with that, but we have a large international community, a lot of tourism. And as you can see here from this data, we've got the kind of two things, the number of transactions and the value of transactions. Initially, you'd think, okay, the shoppers, they're all coming from the UK because we're in the UK and that's what we need to focus on. But actually what you can see is there's a very large number of transactions from the British, but we're not spending as much on our average transaction value. Whereas the tourists that are coming in have much higher transaction values, whilst a fewer number of transactions. And then the size of these circles here actually depicting the total value of the transaction. So having this kind of information, knowing where the shoppers come, can really have an impact about how you approach the shoppers, whether it be the store staff that you put into the specific stores, so you make sure they're multilingual according to the nationality of the shoppers, or whether it's the payment methods that you make sure you've got on offer and support. But what this does do is provide you information about how to give a better experience to the shoppers. Another example we have here is tracking cross-channel shoppers. So here what we've got is the red dots represent store locations and the green dots represent the addresses of where the deliveries for online shopping have occurred. And the darker the green is the more transactions that are performed. And you kind of think, okay, that's some nice data. How's that useful to me? Well, really, you can start using this to try and make some decisions. And you might be saying, okay, well, if the deliveries are there, maybe that's where I should be thinking about putting a store if I want to drive an incremental volume, and actually positioning the stores where your shoppers who buy online are most prevalent or spend most money. And so just having a set of data that sits across the channels enables you to start making some different decisions about what you might do with your store estate. Another scenario that we've used our data for to help people with is really getting right down into that store estates and looking at the impact of opening a new store on existing stores. And so this particular diagram shows the impact of a new store opening in between 4 other stores. And what you see is there's a little bit of cannibalization from each of those other stores, but actually a whole, which represented by the green part of the bar, but actually the blue represents unique shoppers that only shop in that particular store. So you can start building a real picture of the value of that new store to that particular retailer. Now, of course, the opposite can also be true. If you've got information about your shoppers in a particular store and how many of them also shop online and how many of them also shop in other stores that are in the local region, you can then make an informed decision about maybe where you might want to reduce the size of your store estate, closing which store would have the least impact on your transactional, on your revenue for your business. So having access to data in one single place that sits across all of those channels can really provide that kind of capability to make really big business decisions that can make the difference to your business. I'm going to hand you over to Antonio, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the actual specific customer journeys.
Thank you, Angus. So I think as you were saying, the customers are looking for a specific experience. They are moving from the limitations that were generated by the pandemic, and they're looking for experiences that are unique, delivered by the retailer. They have been working, or they have been engaging with the retailers in an environment where they had to shop online. They had to focus on transactions that were contactless, and now they want to have that experience, but they also want to keep that flexibility. They also want to continue in a contactless environment. So putting the customers at the driver's seat of the experience really means to figure out what are the journeys that are more successful, that they are the preferred journeys for them to interact with the retailer. So the traditional channels are really just the starting point of what the design for these new customer journeys can be. We're seeing that we're going way beyond the traditional buy online, pick up in store, the sort of Boris type of journeys, and I'm going to something that is much more complex in terms of number of interactions, contact points, but also something again that is more personalized to the individual customers. So we've seen really an explosion of different journeys that retailers are delivering. And given that, I think as Angus mentioned, the selection of what journeys to build and to implement has to be driven by data, and the data of what is the behavior of the customers. An approach where there is a real focus on design of the experience is needed. Retailers are also looking at adapting the existing solutions. It's not really possible or practical to think of replacing all of the underlying systems for a core omni-channel process engine. You have to really adapt and leverage what you have. So a process of continuous improvement, of iteration becomes really important, alongside the concept of putting the customer at the center of the design. And then from a technology perspective, really the ability to execute in an environment where it is possible to automate in sort of a DevOps type of methodology, where you are able to leverage services in the cloud, is really important, so that the engineering that sits behind the integration of the different channels, the creation of the customer journeys, can be done in a way that is iterative, that really allows you to then experiment and figure out what is the behavior of your customers, what is the data telling you about what they are doing, and subsequently modify, improve the customer journey based on that behavior. Angus, next slide. And at the center of many of the journeys is the contactless commerce. You know, even as the restrictions associated with the pandemic are being lifted, all data points to customers that want to still use contactless. They've now got used to operating using their own mobile device. They are used to having certain apprehension to touching surfaces that they might not have control on. So contactless is really here to stay. The use of QR codes, which is really a fairly old technology, it's been with us for about 20 years, but QR codes in the last 18 months have really taken on. Many use cases now are delivered through QR codes, and this is something again that we think is probably here to stay. It's incorporated to the payment experience, and it is available for payment integration as an effective way of avoiding again touch. With this contactless, the emergence of more scan and go solutions is again something that we we are seeing as here to stay. We go next slide. So to give an example of what an integrated journey now looks like, we're going to talk briefly about the phone store orders. And here, the traditional call center, the e-commerce channel, and the store channel completely blend into what is essentially a collection of customer journeys. And all of these customer journeys then are supported by analytics across all of the steps, so that the results of the interactions can then be analyzed. And as Angus was talking about before, those results can then be incorporated into deciding how the journey should evolve. And the combination of technologies that is required to deliver integrated journeys like this is quite extensive. And so in this type of journey, the need for having a solid integration framework is really important, and having that engineering practices in place that allow for all of these pieces to come together. So the customer will call asking for a product. It will be that call will be actually routed through the digital platform, so that all of the voice interactions can be captured, and we can then subsequently do analysis, sentiment analysis. We can do an overall digital voice analysis of the entire journey. The call can be picked up from anybody. It can be picked up from the store, from a store assistant, and that becomes then again a phone store order journey. But it could be picked up by somebody working from home as well as in the call center. And it will assist in relation to completing the sales order. The sales order is leveraging APIs that are coming from e-commerce. The flow of that order is optimized so that the sales experience at the other end is frictionless, and is focused on the best conversion. The experience of again, these flows allows us then to develop a conversational AI. If we want to use services like Alexa for automation, it can also allow us to have a chatbot available if we want to also provide the journeys through initial steps of the journeys through a messaging interface. And then once the order is completed, then the payment solution is going to provide a pay by link option, which will be directly displayed to the customer on their mobile phone. Hence, continuing the contactless journey. Then the customer can go to the store and pick up their goods, and that order will be transacted in the point of sale. The point of sale will generate the receipt, and will complete the payment settlement, again, without having any contact with the pet device. And for this, what is critical is to have the right payment solution that can adapt to the context of the transaction, like a payment solution like Adyen, and have the right integration so that the right data is provided to the solution at the right time in the context of the step occurring in the customer journey. So in this example, just of phone store orders, you can see your point of sale acting as really as an order hub for omni-channel, bringing together technologies from e-commerce, your payment solution, and your cloud services for the digital voice for sentiment analysis. So this, again, just an example of how stores becoming more of an experience center where you can complete sales, but you can use them as showroom. You can execute journeys for clienteling and also complete fulfillment. Next slide. So key takeaways of what we're seeing. So the shopper is in control. The shopper is the one that is driving what customer journey they want to execute, what are the options they want to take. In some cases, customer, and we were discussing how the preference is to have a contactless experience, but very much the case that some customers will want to have a richer experience in a store where there is more interaction and there is the advice received from store staff, and that will be an option that they will be able to take in the journey. From the retail point of view, in terms of objectives, just making sure that the experiences that the retailer provide are distinctive, that they are recognizable from a brand perspective, and that they can be personalized to the customer. The ability to have contactless shopping whenever regulations change, having that option and being something that can be essentially switched is a really powerful thing to have available. And then that the processes have to be frictionless, regardless of how rich the interaction is. You want to avoid manual steps. You want to avoid anything that really disrupts from what should be a seamless transactional flow. And then from an execution perspective, continuous operational improvement, really important that these journeys are never done, never completed. They continue to improve as the data comes in and you can understand better customer behavior. Incentivizing experimentation and innovation. This is very much a moving goalpost situation where the things that consumers are expecting are continually evolving, and so the retailers have to evolve with them and have the ability to continuously change. And finally, that technological transformation, that improvement on engineering, that is generally described as digital transformation. That is really what delivers that unified commerce that is needed for providing customers with these journeys.
Thank you, Joe. I think just one last comment from me. I think all of this is about giving the best experience for the shoppers to create an environment where they see the product in the best possible light and they're more likely to spend money, to buy things and come back. And that's really what we're trying to do, is create an environment and a set of experiences that can help retailers drive a growth in transaction volumes. And I think we all know that the easier, the more familiar, the more engaging those experiences are, the more likely they are to spend money. So that brings us to the end. We did have a slide for questions and answers. We're running a little bit short on time. I know we're pretty much at the half hour there, which is how long we said. I don't know if we've got any time for any of the questions. I can't see them, Antonio. Can you see the questions?
Yes, let's at least do one question, and then the other questions that we don't have a chance to answer, we will answer offline. Go back to the people that made them. So we have one question that is about what do you think is next for the use of mobile phones as transactional tools? I think from the perspective of customer journeys that we were talking about before, what we are seeing clearly is that many different customer journeys are going to include your mobile phone, the mobile phone of the customer. And the customers now take for granted that they should be able to pay with their mobile phone, whether it is through a digital wallet or scanning a QR code in a sort of pay by link solution, but they should be able to pay. But at the same time, depending on the customer journey, they should be able to pick up the process, the sales process at different points, so that if I actually want to have a sales assisted experience where I have somebody talking to me and explaining what I'm buying and providing advice, and only at the end I want to provide my phone for payment, that's an option that I can have. But also, if I just want to do everything on my phone and add items to the basket in my phone and doing all those things, I can do that as well. So I think that is the tendency that we're seeing from a sort of integration perspective.
And I think from, yeah, so I think from our side, you know, the mobile phone is already the single most important device for transacting and paying for things. I mean, Apple Pay, Google Pay, you know, the adoption of those two payment methods has increased significantly during the pandemic. That people are very, very accustomed to using those kind of devices. I think the use of mobile technology across the board, I mean, we're in the process of bringing to market some Android payment terminals, which are in effect the size of a mobile phone, that people in store will be able to run their full-blown point of sale running on those, and then that becomes very much a mobile payment terminal and point of sale that people are wandering around. So when we kind of talk about the mobile is mobility in store. It's the consumer walking around with a device that means they can buy and pay for things wherever they are in the world. I don't think there's any doubt that the mobile phone is the single most important device in selling things or interacting with shoppers. I think the reality is we need to have an environment that's flexible, that as the shopper's use of this device adapts and evolves over time, so that you've got an architecture, an infrastructure, and a set of partners that can react to that to make sure that you can make the most of the opportunities that come with new developments in technology. But yeah, absolutely, the mobile phone is central to transacting for the future. Okay, so I think that's all for this session from myself. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you Gus and Adyen really for this opportunity to talk together about this exciting topic. Yeah, and thank you very much from me as well. Thanks a lot for joining. Really, really glad we could put this together with SkillNet. Thank you.